And now I'd like to ask Loretta to come to the podium.
And thank all of you for the invitation to come back and speak. I love UUF. I see a lot of familiar faces, and this won't be painful, I promise. Now, when my first friend died of AIDS in 1985, I began a journey walking beside death, and it continues to today. And by the time at the time in 1985, I was 36, and by the time I was 40, I'd been to a dozen funerals and memorials of friends, all of them younger than I, many of them. And I'm kind of in that kind of place now. Last year, I had 8 friends die. I don't know, I'm just listening to this. We are all experiencing that. Even though we're the Olympians of aging, as I look around here, as like this is a pretty strong, sturdy group, we are of that age. And what I learned, I spent 6 years volunteering on an AIDS unit in a hospital in Chicago, and then my mom wound up in long-term care, and I spent 6 years with her having dinner every night because the food there was better than in my kitchen. And then I continued to visit for 12 years. I started speaking all over the country at nursing home conferences and just speaking and writing wherever I could. And what I learned in those days was that death is a spiritual experience with medical implications. And it also has some legal implications that I'm going to talk a little bit about today. Death is a sacred, holy time in our lives, and we can't be afraid of it. You know, Robin Moore, the past pastor here, gave her final sermon last month, and she died 2 weeks or less later. And she stood here and said, there is no death. I'm just transforming. And that's the essence. When we start to think about a death-positive aspect, you know, it's important that we don't look at death as something that's taboo and morbid, something we can talk about. And it's actually the mark of a healthy society to talk about dying. And what better group of people to talk about it than all of us who are closer than ever to dying. You know, there's something in Mexico, where we all are, we have the gift of the Day of the Dead. This is where the Mexicans celebrate life, which is the point of understanding and being friends with death, understanding our mortality. This is a container. This is not who I am. I just live in this container. And I'm going to be 75 in a couple months, and my container is not the same container it was 5 years ago, and it's not going to be the same container in 5 more years. I'm very aware of that. And there's an exercise I want to share with you. Tonight when you go home, I want you to draw a line on a piece of paper. Okay? Like this. You see it on the screen? Big. Okay? This is a time management exercise. I got it at a $600 one-day workshop when I was a lot younger. This is your birth and this is your death. I want you to go home and draw a line where you are today, where you think you are on this lifeline. And this isn't meant to scare you by any means. It's meant to inspire you. I have a little one on my refrigerator. I look at it every day to remind me that I can make what I can make of the time I have ahead. This is my ooh-la-la time. It's all of our ooh-la-la time. We have everything we need. And we live in this amazing community, which you've already noticed how friendly it is here. We've left our major supports, our long-term friends, my friends of 30 years and 40 years and 50 years, are not here to be with me when I'm sick and ill and need help. But you're all here because it takes a village to die well. There's just no way around that. You know, if you listen to Viktor Frankl, who wrote Man's Search for Meaning, he talks about the one thing that cannot be taken away from a man is his or her attitude. So as soon as you start feeling yourself getting uncomfortable, think about the fact that we were all born with death holding our hand. And north of the border, we spend a lot of time and energy pretending she's not there and trying to run away from her and trying to argue with her. Not yet. No, not yet. The Mexicans have learned to dance with her. Let's take that example. Let's look at death as this amazing time in our life and not be afraid of it. Make friends with her. Learn to dance with her. I'm not saying it's good. I'm not encouraging you all to go out and jump in the lake. In fact, I totally discourage self-deliverance in any violent way. There's no need for that. We're all going to just age into the end of our lives. We're programmed to do it, just like the butterflies are. You know, every butterfly starts as an egg like we did, and then it turns into a caterpillar, eats and poops just like we do. And then one day it decides to transform, and it'll stop eating just like we do before we die. And it'll hang in the shape of a J underneath something so that it can be free. And in an instant, its skin splits and starts crawling up its little body, and inside is the chrysalis. And it looks like nothing is happening in that chrysalis. And that's where the transformation takes place, just like with us. We all have a chrysalis stage at the end of our lives. I mean, I think how many of you have been with somebody as they're dying? Yeah. What a gift. You know, people I know, when my dad died, I had left 2 hours earlier. And I felt guilty about that for 15 years until someone said, he didn't want you there. I thought, oh, and this is true. A lot of people wait until we leave. Or they wait until George comes in from California or Calgary before they let go, which tells me we do have something to say about when we leave our bodies. If we can wait for that plane to land or that car to arrive, what's going on there? There's something so connected to our life and our transformation that's programmed into us, just like the caterpillar and the butterfly. And one day that chrysalis opens up. It's like magic. The suns get to a warm spot in the sky, and this butterfly will come out, and it's got a little fat body, and wings are all wrinkled, and it takes like half a minute to pump fluid out of its body, and then it has to get used to being a butterfly. What happened? I was a chrysalis a moment ago, and I was a caterpillar. And these are the transitions that we go through as we're lucky enough to age. You know, I said I had 8 friends die last year. One of my 78-year-old friends told me he had 7, and I said, make younger friends. I see a couple young people here. We got to grab them. Here, if you want to make younger friends, it helps to speak a little Spanish, right? Yeah. He said, all my parable pallbearers are gone. I said, okay. This is what we're going, this is life. This is how we're going through transition. You know, there are a couple of things. Many of us are living with chronic illness. That's part of the aging process. In fact, this is the first time in the history of humanity there have been so many people living over 60 years of age. Never happened. In 1950, I was born in 49, there were 2.8 billion people on Earth. Now there are almost 9 billion. In 70 years, we have multiplied. And the largest increase in population is people over 85. Everywhere, not just here. 30% of the Japanese population are over 65. And what's that mean? That means a lot of health care. That means a lot of assisted devices. That means a lot of enjoying life in ways we never thought we'd be able to enjoy life. I'm giving you a lot of homework to do today. There are handouts outside. If you haven't gotten them, I want you to be sure you have this one. It starts with cover story. Let's say tomorrow is the day you have an emergency. Okay? This is page 12 and 13 out of the September 2021 Conexiones magazine from LCS. And Catherine Luria is going to talk about the LCUUF care team. Because again, it takes a village to live well and to transition well. This has everything you need to know about handling an emergency here. It talks about health insurance, what's covered, what's not. We need to be doing our homework. And what I'm very aware of, I mean, last week when my friend called me, my friend of 30 years, we've traveled together, we dated tandemly, we've done all of our changes. Her son died 2 years ago. I went and helped her through that. She's got cancer. And I'm going, you know, how many of my friends are going to have illness before I do? I need to know, and we need to help each other because More than one person is going to be involved when you have an emergency. This is going to help. What to do about insurance. Bank accounts. I just learned what a beneficiary has to go through to collect my money here. They have to come down and be here for 2 weeks. Have a conversation with your banker. Do you have a beneficiary? Do you want a cosigner? Notary. In Mexico, all of your wills and your healthcare medical directives have to be completed by a notario. Otherwise, they're not valid. Anything you've done in the States doesn't work here. It's a whole different ballgame. We have a reaching out program at LCS. People who live alone and need to be checked in on, they can have a volunteer call them or email them or WhatsApp them every day. And if you all have somebody who checks on you every day, I have a girlfriend I call when I walk my dog every morning. We compare notes. It's a good idea just to have someone that you talk to every day in case there's a day you miss. This talks about ambulances and hospitals. Cruz Roja, you all had an opportunity to buy this bottle. This is really important. Okay, the Cruz Roja bottle, you had an opportunity to buy it, go home and fill it out. If you have one, look at it and update it. I looked at mine recently as I was preparing, and I have the wrong doctor on mine because I changed docs. So updating all of this is really critical. Okay. In case of emergency, are you alone when something unexpected happens? Have a wallet card with you. Pretty simple, make your own. There's one inside the bottle that has medical information. I walk my dog with a fanny pack. I have an ID for people to call my doctor, my 2 powers of attorney here, and on the other side, my 2 powers of attorney in the States. You can't be helped if you don't help people help you. Okay. The Lake Chapala Society provides a free booklet for everyone, and I can tell you I have given out probably 2,000 of these booklets. How many of you have one already in your house sitting around? Okay. It will take you 15 minutes to read this. This is a roadmap. If you're going to be here part-time and certainly full-time, we need to know all this information. There is a paper inside that you can register with LCS, and there are multiple reasons. If something happens to an expat, Canadian or American, the authorities will contact LCS to see if they have this basic information. It's your name, your parents' names. We're all filed under our mother's maiden names, by the way, by the government. Household information, who's taking care of your household. If you've made arrangements for a funeral, which I highly recommend you at least get registered with a funeral home. Why? Why bother? It's all practice. Every time you fill out some paperwork that's related to the end of your life, you're making friends with death. You're saying, I'm mortal, I need to look at this. And hey, I understand procrastination. We'll talk about that in a minute. If you've already done this, they have an update. You can get this at the LCS office. The booklet is free. Anybody can fill it out. Anybody can register. Okay. On page 8 is a link to, it's on the top of page 8. Some wonderful group of expats did this. It's called Lakeside Emergency Info. Now, this is the part we all hate, right? This is the bank accounts, real property and vehicles information, investments and trusts, medical and health information, your utilities, who's going to shut off your utilities, internet and electronic devices, how many passwords do you have, emergency cards. It's all in here. You can download it. The link is on page 8. Just take the time to at least look at it, and I suggest you fill it in pencil. I canceled 3 credit cards and got 2 that don't charge me, the annual fees. So now I have to copy all my credit cards again in case I lose my purse or my wallet and I've got the cards copied. And you can go to any papeleria if you don't have a copier, find a friend who has a copier. All of this is just for you, not anybody else. The link. Okay. So, if you didn't see my talk at LCS on dementia in February, did anybody see that? No? Okay. Well, I want you to Google Loretta Downes Open Circle Dementia. People are sharing it. I'm getting a lot of views, and people stop me on the street and thank me. Last week, I took my clothes out for the morning, and I took my pajamas off and laid them next to my clothes on the bed, and something got in my head, and I put my pajamas back on. It's very funny, and I did laugh, but I thought, I'm starting to pay attention to all this, because I have had and am having friends who have dementia. And if it's happening to me, because I don't know, there's that normal aging memory loss that we all have, walking into a room and going, oh, why am I in that room? I probably did it 10 times this morning while I was working on this, at least 10 times. Oh, why don't, yes, that's normal. But there is a turning point. And we have to pay attention to this because the numbers are getting very scary. 55 million people in the world now live with dementia. And that number is expected to double by 2050. It's an aging disease. There's no cure for it, and I doubt they're going to find one in our lifetimes. Right now, what medication is available delays it, but doesn't stop it. And it's important that we're paying attention to this. And it's important that we're not running away from it. We have so many small assisted living homes here that are so easy to visit, and I'm going to encourage you to find someone to visit somewhere. Because anything we bring not only is a gift to the person we're visiting, it's a gift to us. Just reminding us that the keys to a happy life are gratitude and service. And we need to be paying attention to what life is like for someone who's losing memories. I visited with a couple not long ago, and the woman said, do you remember when we made love the first time in the pool? And he didn't remember. And we have to decide how much we want to lose and what we can do about it. And there are options. I'm going to give you some more information on that in a minute. But this is serious. We all take a lot of medicine. The average 65-year-old takes 5 prescription drugs because we're living with a lot of illness that we can take, that we cannot cure, but we can manage, right? That's new. That's one reason there's so many of us living so long. My mom lived to 93. And she was pretty happy the last years. In fact, my mother and I had a terrible relationship for the first 57 years of my life. And on her 90th birthday, I said, Mom, how does it feel to be 90? And she said, it went so fast. And I said, would you do anything differently? And she looked at me and said, I'd be a better mother. And my first reaction was she knew. And then I thought, oh my God, the poor thing has been carrying this guilt around. And I talked to other mothers. I'm not one because it looked like a really hard job. And they said, guilt it's like the first rising emotion. And after that, I could feel something open up. And I said, you did the best you could. And you taught me what I needed to learn. And the last 3 years of her life, we were in love. It was like I felt that I could do no wrong, and I felt she could do no wrong. The end of life is a great opportunity for reconciliation, for us to let go of the stuff, that the part of the line from today until what's past. You can't change anything that happened in the past. Don't live with regret for it. Apologize, let it go, don't repeat it, forgive yourself. Because what time is left, you want it to be unburdened with things in your head. Because the head and the body are very connected. And we can make ourselves healthier just by being positive, by being grateful, by doing some service. And it will make that time we have left, even when we hit the big bumps of illness or a loss, it'll just help us get through that, feeding our hearts and our souls. I said that we need a village, and I made a list of who to contact in case of emergency. and I think this is really critical. I made one for Mexico and one for Chicago. And when I pulled this out today, I realized I needed to add my doctor to Mexico. Update, take a look. I had the wrong friend's number, and when I sent this to her, she said, oh, fix that. Everybody has copies of this, so they all know if I'm in an emergency and I can't speak, they know who to call. Because there are two kinds of emergencies. One where you're talking, then all your decisions are your own. And the other is when you're not talking and someone else has to make decisions for you. And that's why you've got to do advanced healthcare planning. Your medical directive names somebody that you will allow to speak for you in the event you can't speak for yourself. It's a very important relationship. When I asked my big sister, 15 years older than I, Dolores, I want you to be my power of attorney for healthcare, a retired nurse. She said, I'm on the phone, Loretta, you're my baby sister. I don't want you to ever die. I did not let her be my voice because there are certain conditions I wouldn't want my life prolonged. I don't want to live on a ventilator. I don't want to live on a feeding tube. I was very clear about all that. And it would be too hard for her. So I named a friend who it wouldn't be too hard for and who would stand tall to the docs, because the docs might say, oh, but if we don't do this, she'll die. Okay. These are very important decisions that you have to make. And I picked something up moments ago that is really important. This is from saying that there is no one like you. I will venture to say that not two of us had the same breakfast this morning. That's how different we all are. I mean, there was a time for most of us, it was for me, when breakfast was a cigarette and a cup of coffee. Not anymore. It was berries and granola and yogurt this morning. Right. But this is about you. And if you're not talking about what's important to you, then someone else is going to have a problem deciding what's important to you. And if you've ever been in a situation where you had to make a decision for someone and you didn't know what to do, you did the right thing. Do not feel that you didn't. You did enough. You did the right thing. Because we make a decision based on the information we have at the time we make the decision. And the more information we have, the clearer and the more sacred the decision becomes. So that list is really important. And the conversation. If we're not talking about what's important to us at the end of our lives, we're missing a part of living well during our lives. Believe me, I understand procrastination. On the back page of the booklet is a to-do list. Oh boy! Now, I suggest you just look at what you want to start with. You don't have to do it in order. Pick something you want to start with. Set a deadline. Now, I'm turning 75 in July. Ooh la la. I've never been this old. It feels weird, I have to admit. You know, my mother was in the nursing home one day, and lady passes her in her wheelchair, mom's there, and they reach out to hold hands, and the woman says, how old are you? And my mother said, 90, and the woman said, oh, you're young. And I said, how are you? And she said, 93. It's all relative, right? I mean, my godchildren who are 20 think I'm really old. God knows they think you're old. Pick something, set a deadline. I have set the month of my birthday, I'm going to review all of my stuff because I know there's some changes. My will is 5 years old. I'm not, all the people I put in it 5 years ago, they're all not going to get my stuff. Not all of it, at least. So set yourself a deadline. Okay, you've got a resource page. This is something I hand out. I give workshops at LCS quarterly on advanced care planning and dying well. Go into a lot more detail than I can today. And this has some wonderful, wonderful places to look, including George Carlin's YouTube, Death and Dying Again. Oh, we have to make some humor in this. Okay. There's some wonderful books. You can always send me an email. My email's on the back here. I love emails. I'll answer questions. I'm happy to do that. There's something that's not here. Dyingwithdignity.ca, Canada, has a whole booklet on advanced care planning. Also on here is Compassion and Choices, tools It's from America. There's a whole advanced care planning booklet that you can download or you can ask for them to mail to you. So take a moment. Some of these are easy. They're short articles, how to prepare yourself for a good end of life. Katie Butler wrote a book called Dying Well, The Art of Dying Well, which is on here, and I've got a page and a half. She gave me a page and a half for my work. Why not? Voluntarily stopping eating and drinking. People come up to me and they say, I want the magic pill. There's no magic pill. There isn't. There are multiple options to hasten death. They're not all available to us here in Canada. Medical aid in dying is legal constitutionally for the entire country. How many of you are Canadian? Oh, I tried to be I'm going to try. I want to be a Canadian citizen because it's compassionate. I actually have a quick story about someone who did medical aid in dying. He was a retired policeman, and he'd been in a terrible accident years before. He was in a wheelchair, and he was in his late 70s, and he got cancer and decided to treat cancer for a while, which is reasonable. Try a test. And then it wasn't doing so well. He was sicker than he wanted to be, and he said, okay, I'm going to apply for aid in dying. And they gave him an appointment, come to the Maid House this day at 10 o'clock in the morning, and at 10:20 we'll start the infusion, because in Canada they infuse you. In America there are 10 states that have legal medical dying, but you have to be able to drink the medicine yourself. That's a requirement. They all require you do an application process. It's a little time consuming. Anyhow, so the family's all gathered because when you plan death, like an expected death, people are keeping vigil. You're there, you're waiting for the person to die. So they're there, and the doctor couldn't get the vein to put the needle in because the chemotherapy had burned his vein up. So the doc said, well, let's go to the hospital where all the equipment is. And the family said, we're all here. We came in different cars. Why don't you go get the equipment and we'll order lunch? And they ordered wings and pizza. Last meal. That's what he wanted. So the doc came back and he got John all hooked up and looked at him and said, now when I start this infusion, you'll die. Is that what you want? And John looked at the doctor and said, wait a minute, I want one more wing. So this is going into your death consciously, carefully, thoughtfully. We don't want to keep it a secret. That's the problem with suicide. It's done alone and violently. You want your loved ones to know this. You want people to be able to sit with you and people get married the day before they die. There are all sorts of amazing things. People are having parties before they die. The celebration of life where you can hear everyone say how wonderful you were. I have to tell, my advance directives, I did an addendum, because besides the medical stuff, I don't want, listen, if I'm dying, I don't want them to bring me back. But I also wrote down to my friends, I want classical music. My sister would have had me listening to country and western. I want chocolate ice cream on my lips all the time, not vanilla, unless there's chocolate sauce on it. I want socks on my feet. I live alone. Nobody knows these things. So I was very clear. I said I want lipstick on because I already look dead without it. And I want my girlfriends to tweeze all my chin hairs. I'm vain, and I want to go to the crematorium tidy. So you can do this just as long as you're communicating. One of the links on here is for the Conversation Project. They have toolkits for how to talk to your doctor and how to talk to your loved ones. Because if you want to start talking to your children or your grandchildren, they're going to say, oh, Grandma, don't talk about that. I don't want to hear that. They need to hear it. And they need to hear it calmly and gently and lovingly and sacredly. They need to know we're not always going to be here. And they need us. These kids today are struggling. Someone mentioned the protests. It reminded me of Vietnam. Kids got killed at Kent State by the police. I live in Chicago. The 1968 convention was there, and they were calling the cops pigs, and they were behaving like that. So the kids need us. We have to be role models. We have to have mindful dying. We have to, for each other, so we can learn what. I don't like say good death and bad death, but it's like a good ending to a book. I mean, this is your one and only life. Only you can give it a good ending. You know, Ram Dass said death is like taking off a tight shoe. And this guy was awfully close to God. Steve Jobs, the man who founded Apple Computer, on his deathbed, his sister reported this. His whole family was gathered around. He was 57. He'd been dealing with cancer, a rare pancreatic cancer, for 10 years. Had all the money in the world. Could not live longer. On his deathbed, everybody's there, and he stopped, looked past them all, and said, wow, oh wow, wow, and died. That's where I want to be. I had a woman who had a celebration of life here. She had 60 friends. Everybody got 2 drink tickets. Could have appetizers at Eve's. You could stay longer. They did. Drink more, order off the menu. It was fabulous. I got there. I'm off script. That's okay. I got there, and she's sitting in like a throne in the corner, all dressed up, and there was a table with little stuff on it, little things of hers, and a tree, empty dead tree with little plastic bags with jewelry, and people went up to say hello to her, and she said, take something, take something, take something. Well, I got earrings. And it's just this sacred little moment, and I said, how do you feel about this? And she said, I'm happy, I'm going home. Just like Reverend Robin Moore did, going home. That's where I want to be. And you have to decide for yourself where you want to be when you get to the end of that line, and who you want to be with you, and how you want to look back at your life, and if you can say, it was good. Thank you.
Thank you. This is hard for me. My husband is coming home tonight, and the first thing he's going to do is watch this video, and then we have some work to do. So, again, thank you, Loretta. Sure. One thing.
Okay, the reality is that one of us is going to be the first to die, and one's going to be the last in this group. And I'm very aware when I'm with a friend, I allow myself to hold that moment and know one of us is going to be the first to die and one's going to be the last. I don't do this all the time, but when something's special, and I'll say, I love you. Thank you for being in my life.
Thank you.
I'm sorry for that thing I said to you 12 years ago. And whatever you think you might have done, I forgive you, because I don't want to wait to say goodbye to say all those things. Whoa. Practice makes perfect.